name is Tiffany and welcome back to my channel. If you like sewing and DIY videos, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I am back with another Upcycle by Little Toe where I take old forgotten items and give them a new life. In this video, I'm gonna show you how I turned this dated corduroy dress into this matching pants and vest set, so let's get started. This is the dress I'll be upcycling, and I found this at the Goodwill bins. I love the texture of this corduroy fabric, and this dress has a collar and a buttonhole closure along the front. If you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I'm typically more of a spring and summer girl when it comes to my style, but I really wanted to challenge myself to make something more fall inspired because I feel like the texture of corduroy is just so perfect for fall and winter. So my plan is to turn the original dress into a matching vest and pants set. Here are some of my inspiration photos, and I am a little worried that it's gonna be a little bit too matchy-matchy, but worst case, I can just wear the pieces separately. I'm gonna start with the pants, and I'm going to be using this vintage pattern that I found at a thrift store. I am going to be making a small modification since the fit of this pant is a little bit dated, but I'll show you how I changed that. Here is one of my front leg pieces cut out, and I'm laying the original pattern on top to show you the modification. As you can see, I've made the pant leg a lot wider along this side seam, and I also adjusted the width of the inseam slightly. I also shortened the pants. The only reason I'm shortening this pattern is because I just don't have enough fabric. I definitely would have kept the length if I could. I'm placing my other front pant leg right side spacing, and I'll sew along the center front from here to this point, which is indicated in the pattern, leaving the top open for the zipper. Here is what it looks like sewn, and I've gone ahead and pressed the seam allowance allocated for the fly front. You can see that the seam allowance on this side is wider, and the one on this side is narrower. It's a little bit easier to see the difference when I place them side by side, and these were both indicated on the pattern. Next is to sew on the zipper, and I'm just using this metal one that I had in my stash. I'm placing my zipper underneath, lining up the folded edge of the fabric to the zipper teeth, and I'll top stitch this in place. Now I'll line up the other side of my pants with the other side of the zipper. I'll top stitch this in place using the guide noted in the pattern, and here is what it should look like now. You can also hand baste the zipper in place first to make things a little bit easier. Next is to sew in the pleats, and here is a close-up of what that should look like. I'm gonna go ahead and cut out my pockets now, but I wanna make sure that I'm leaving enough fabric for my matching top as well. So I'm also going to use this remnant that I found at an estate sale. It has these really dainty flowers on it, and I think it goes pretty well with the corduroy. Here is the piece that I sewed together for my pocket, and here is the pocket lining. Next step is to sew them to the front of my pants. I'm placing the pocket lining right side spacing, and I'll sew along here. This is what it should look like, and I'll go ahead and press this in place. I also sewed the seam allowance to the lining side to help keep it in place. Now I'm lining up my pocket pieces right side spacing, and I'll sew these together, and here is the completed pocket bag. I also basted the pocket in place along the top here and along the side seam. Following the same steps, I sewed on the other pocket, and I also finished the raw edges with some bias tape for a nice clean finish. Moving on to the back, again you can see that I widened the pant leg to match the front. Next step is to sew the darts, and this is what it should look like now. I'm placing my other back piece right side spacing, and I'll sew these together along the center back. Here is what the back of the pants should look like now. I'm placing the front of my pants right side spacing, and I'll sew along both side seams as well as the inseam, and these pants are really starting to take shape. Up next is to sew on the waistband. Here are the pieces I cut out for my waistband. This top one will be the shell, and it is interfaced, and this one will be my lining, and it is not interfaced. I'm placing them right side spacing, and I'll sew along the top here. Here it is sewn together, and now it's time to attach it to the rest of the pants. I'm pinning the shell waistband to my pants, making sure I'm lining up the side seams and pinning all the way around. I'll sew these together, and here is what the pants should look like at this point. Now I'm folding the waistband so that it's right side spacing. I'll fold the seam allowance of the lining up, and I'll sew both layers of the waistband together along the edge here. I'll do the same for the other side, and here is what it should look like now with the lining waistband still left unsewn. I'll hand sew and then top stitch this in place, and here is what the finished waistband should look like, and I also went ahead and hand sewed a hook and eye closure. Because I was forced to shorten my pattern, I basically didn't leave myself a hem allowance, but I also don't want my pants to be cropped, so I'm going to use the buttonhole placard from the original dress to hem my pants, and this allows me to finish the raw edge while adding a little bit of length. I've cut and sewn the buttonhole placard to match the width of my hem, and now I'm placing the raw edge in between the pieces of the placard and I'll top stitch this in place. Here is a close-up of the finished hem. I am so glad that worked out, and it kind of looks like a cuff, which I'm not mad about. I also wanted to show you that I encased all of the raw edges on the pants for a nice clean finish. I'm going to be working on the vest today, and I decided to buy a pattern on Etsy. I've been really wanting to start selling my self-drafted patterns, but I have no idea where or how to start. So I've just been buying a few patterns from some smaller designers just to get an idea of how I can start manufacturing my own patterns as well. I picked out this vest pattern. I'll make sure to link it down below, and let's get sewing. Here are my front pieces. I went with a size small, and this pattern does not include seam allowance, so make sure you add that before cutting the fabric. I'll sew these pieces together, and this is what it should look like. Moving on, here are the back pieces cut out. I'll go ahead and sew these together. Now I'm placing my front pieces right side spacing. Following the instructions, I also interfaced part of the front panels. I'll sew these together along the shoulder seams, and here is what the vest should look like at this point. Then I went ahead and made a lining, which I'm placing right side spacing. I barely had any of that lining fabric left over, so I did have to patchwork that back piece together. I'll sew the shell to the lining starting at this point, around the neckline and ending at this point. I'll also sew along the armholes on both sides, and you should have something that looks like this. I also went ahead and clipped notches in the seam allowance along any curved edge. Next step is to carefully turn the vest to the right side. This was a little bit fiddly since the area around the shoulder seams are quite narrow. I'm gonna sew the side seams next, so starting on this side, I'm matching my shell layers and my lining layers right side spacing and pinning in place. I'll sew this together and I'll repeat this for the other side, and here is what the vest should look like with this bottom section still left unsewn. Now I'm going to match up the shell and lining along the hem so that they are right side spacing, and I'll pin together, sandwiching the vest in between the layers. I also make sure that I'm lining up all of the seams. I'll sew this together, but I'll leave a small gap so that I can turn the vest out to the right side again. I did this very carefully since the hole I left was pretty small and I didn't want to accidentally rip any of the seams open. To close up the hole, I'll fold the seam allowance up and top stitch this in place. I'll also top stitch the entire hem, and here is what the finished hem should look like. I have good news and bad news. The good news is that this was a really easy pattern to put together, and the bad news is that I definitely should have made this in a bigger size. As you can see, the vest is pretty snug on me, and there's just no way I can comfortably overlap my front pieces. So instead of a buttonhole closure, I'm gonna sew in a bunch of hook and eyes so that my front pieces can just meet instead of overlap. I had some tiny hook and eyes in my stash, so I hand sewed those on. I decided to go with 5 sets spread out evenly, and here is what the vest looks like with the closures sewn on. A little reminder of how we started out, and here is the outfit now. I actually like this set a lot more than I thought I would. I definitely would have preferred the vest with the buttonhole closure, but I still think that this works, and of course the best part is that I can mix and match these pieces for different looks. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I'll be posting more photos on my Instagram, so make sure you're following me there at Little Toe. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I love reading your comments, so let me know your thoughts down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.